Hello everyone, welcome back to the Python programming series. We are in the part 14 of this series, and in this video I'm going to explain about functions in Python. So this is one of the most important topic in Python. So yeah, let's get started. In the previous videos, you have seen many functions like print function, type function, input function, sorted function, and many other functions, right? But what is actually a common thing between all these functions? They all do some action, right? They all have some work to do. Like print function prints on the screen, input function takes input from the user, type function will return the type of the data, and sorted function will sort a list or a tuple, right? So the thing common between all these function is doing some work, right? Functions will take some input and it will give out some output. So you think functions like a box. Here you can see it is a function, and this function will take out some input, take in some input, and it will return out some output. Like based on the input, it will do some action on the input and it will return out some output. So that is what a function is. So in programming terms, it is a block of code which does some action for us, right? Like for example, if you see, now this is a print function, and what it's doing, it prints something. Like print function, what it does, whatever which is written inside this quotes, it just prints it on the screen. So the action of print function is printing on the screen. And what is this type of phi? What it does, it returns out the, when I print the type of phi, it will actually give me class int, because type of phi returns the what type of data it is, and that's the action of type, and print prints the type of that. So these are all functions, and input function will take the input from the user, and sorted function will sort the list. So various functions have different actions to do, like different work to do. And all these functions which you have learned till now are called built-in functions. Like these functions are written by the Python developers. Like whatever the functions you have seen till date are the functions which are written by the Python developers, which are already present in the Python programming language. You have not written anything like print function and you are using it. They are already given by the developers itself. They are already present in the programming language and you are learning them and using them, right? But what if I say you can create your own functions which does some kind of work? Suppose if you have an idea to create a function which does some action for you and maybe that's useful for you, then you can write it. Then you can use that function in your programming language. Then you can use that function in your code. So those functions, the functions which are written by the user or programmer, are called user defined functions. So now you're going to learn how to create those functions which does some work. Not the functions which are given by the developers, but the functions which you yourself create. So let's learn how to create those functions. Let's learn how to make them working. Let's learn how to make them do some work for us, which make our code better and useful. So yeah, let's get started. Here you can see. So this is a function called blend, and what it does, it takes out some raw ingredients as input. Here you can see it is taking apple as an ingredient, which is an input to this function. So this function is called blend, and what it does, it takes out some ingredients as input and it prepares the finished result, that is the juice. So in basic terms, a function takes some input, the data elements into it, and it does some work on them, and whatever which is done, and it will return out some output, that is the finished result. And in the programming language, A function may or may not take input, but it will definitely do something. Like it will definitely do some work, right? So it see here you can see input, and then it will go on to the process, and then it will return out some output, and that's the whole idea of function. So I hope you got it in basic terms. I hope you got it what actually a function means. Now let's write our first function, like how a function, a user defined function, a function which we create, how to create it. This is the structure to make, to create a function. Like this def means define. It states to Python interpreter that I'm creating a function. Like def means I'm defining a function. Def means I'm defining a function, and here we write the function name. That here, for example, it is written as make smoothie. That is the function name to create a smoothie. And in the parenthesis, and as you have seen, every function, here you can see every function has this parenthesis, and in this we are going to give out some inputs or data elements to the function which they work upon. So every function has this parenthesis, you have to remember, right? Now yeah, so def defines the function, that's the keyword which is used. And make smoothie, for example, here we write out the function name, and then we keep the parenthesis, and whatever the data elements which has to be given to the function are mentioned inside the parenthesis. As you can see here, fruit and liquid are required parameters to make the smoothie. So fruit and liquid are given as data elements to this function, and you start the function with a colon, and whatever which has to be done by the function will be written inside this function. So for more understanding, let's see. Now here you can see, if I want to create an if condition, what I am going to do, I will write if, this is the keyword, and after that I will mention a condition, and then I will specify a colon, and if this becomes true, then I have to do something, right? So that's why I use conditional statements, and whatever has to be done will be written with this specified indentation, right? When I click enter, I get an indentation which makes sure that whatever which I write inside this will belong to the if condition, and if at all this condition becomes true, then this code will get executed. So if this condition, and then I'm going to write down the instructions whatever has to be done. So in the same way, while creating functions, I will use this def keyword, which means defining the function, define the function, and I'm going to write addition, let's say greet. So I have created a social media platform, and in this social media platform, when the user opens my app, I need to actually greet him, like I need to say hello to him. Then so for that I'm creating a greet function which says, so this is how we write down the name of the function, and we open it up with a parenthesis like this. So functions are represented with parenthesis, and then we have a colon which is the start of the function. Then I click enter, then with this indentation it says that whatever I'm writing, it belongs to this function. Okay, so I'm writing print hello. Now if I run this code, do you think it will get it will execute? No, it will not. Why? Because when I say print hello, this is being indented to the greet function. Like this print function is actually a part of this greet function. Then also it should get executed. You may have that doubt, but no. Why? Because when I say def greet, it's actually saying to the interpreter that I'm only creating a function, but I'm not using it now. So whenever I use the function, you then execute whatever the code instructions which are given in that greet function, you then execute it. But now I'm saying that I'm only creating a function, but I'm not using it. So how to use a function? So in order to use a function, we need to call it. How do you call it? You just specify the function name with a parenthesis, and you can see now it gets executed, right? So in order to execute a function, in order to execute the instructions which are mentioned in a function, we need to actually call the function, we need to invoke it. So in this mode it is actually sleeping, like it's not working. It's Python interpreter just knows that there exists a function called greet, but it's not doing any kind of work. I'm only going to execute the function whenever it is called. So when I call here with the function name and a parenthesis, then this function gets active, it wakes up, and then it starts executing its own instructions. So the Python interpreter comes to this line, it says okay, this is a function, but I'm not going to enter and execute whatever the instructions which are mentioned in this function. This is just to make sure that there is a function exists called greet, and then I will enter into the line 5, and line 5 the Python interpreter sees a function call, and then again it will enter into the line 4 and executes whatever the instructions which are mentioned in this function. So this is how a function execution happens. How? Calling a function. How? Suppose when you say define a function make smoothie, it's actually creating a function, but it's not executing it. It's just making sure that Python interpreter knows that there exists a function called this. And whenever you call this function, like whenever you wake this function, then the instructions which are mentioned in this function gets starts executing. Like now you make smoothie, you call the function. When you call the function starts executing, and whatever its work is there, it will do it, and it will return out the result. So that's the basic thing which you have to keep in mind while creating functions. So how a function has to be created? First, define a function. Then to use a function, we need to call the function. Okay, so I hope you got it, how to use functions, how to create functions. For more understanding, let's do addition of two numbers. But before that, you need to have something knowledge of parameters and arguments. Let's understand that. What are parameters and arguments? So, as I said, if there is a function called f of x, this function f of x will take some input and it will return out some output, right? This is called a function, and this function is taking some input, and this function is returning out some output. So a function basically takes out some input and return out some output. So whenever I'm creating a function called addition, right? So what this function has to do, this function actually need to add two numbers, but it doesn't have any kind of data. Here we can see there is no data present in this, and whatever the variables which I create in this function is a part of different universe which cannot be used when I write something which is not of the indentation of the function. This will become more clear when I explain about the scope of the variables, but yeah, for now let's understand this more clearly. Like when I create this addition function, I want some data elements to be worked upon. Like I have to give some input to the function, then only it will work on that input and it will give out some output to me, right? So I am going to create a variable called x is equals to 10 and y is equals to 20 here. Now what this function has to do? This function has to print x plus y, right? But do you think it will work? Let's see. No. Why? Because we did not actually call the function. When we actually call it, you can see it works. But this is not the way which you need to do. When you are actually creating variables, These are called global variables, and when I explain this in the part of scope of the variables, this will become more clear. But the good practice is when you create variables, you actually pass them as values to the function, and then this function receives some values, and based on those values it will do some actions on them, and it will give out some output. In simple words, I will pass x and y values to the function. When I pass these values to the function, there must be some values to receive this as well. So when I use the same variable names called x and y and now print it, I will get the same output. But will there be any difference? Of course there will be. If I say x is equals to 10 now, and if I do the same work, sorry, if I say x is equals to 20 now and do the same thing, I got 40. Why? Suppose if I say print, this is inside function, and I'm going to print x and I'm going to print y, and now yeah, so I will call the function addition x comma y, and now here I will print, this is outside the function, and then I'm going to print x and y. Do you think there will be a change or both written out the same output? Let's see. See, inside the function, sorry, I did not change the value of x here. So when I say x is equals to 20 here, and if I do print x plus y here, and if I print x plus y here, let's see. Do you see that? Inside the function, I got value of x as 20 and value of y as 20 and the sum as 40. Outside the function, I have value of x as 10 and value of y as 20 and sum as 30. Do you think, don't you think the output should be same? Because I'm using the same variable names x and y. I'm changing the value of x in x as 20. So the value has to become 20 here as well. And then it should execute the same thing. But it's not happening like that. Why? Why do you think it's not going in that way? Do you think x is equals to 20 starts here, so x is equals to 10 again, it overwrites the variable, so it does something like this? No, it's not like that. If I write x is equals to 10 above this function as well, then I'm getting this, I will get the same output. Then why it's happening like that? So the point is, when I actually send these values called x and y to this function, there are some variables which receive this function's input, and whatever the values which I'm sending through these variables here, the copies of the values will get into this, not the exact same variables. These exact same variables will not be sent to the function. The copies of those values, their duplicates of those values gets stored in this variables. Like now this x and y are completely different from this x and y. If I change the values of x and y in this function, there will be no effect on these values which are outside this function. So these are completely different universe. The parameters of the function are completely different universe. It may have the same names as the variables which are present outside this function universe, but whatever the effect which has been done on the parameters of the function or the variables of the function will not show any kind of effect on the functions which are outside that, on the variables which are outside the function. So I hope you got it. Whenever you give out some variables or whenever you send some data to the function to be acted upon, those data and the function which receives the data, so function also has to receive the data, and that data has to be stored in some variables. So these variables are completely different from these variables, Like now x is 10, so this 10 and 20 will be sent to the function, and that will be stored in these different variables called x is equals to 10 and y is equals to 20. Like it will be stored in this way, and then you can do any action on this variables. So the basic thing you need to remember, don't take much stress on this. In simple terms, whenever you create a function like this, and you may think that the function has to receive some data elements to be worked upon, then you specify the data elements which it needs to take. Suppose if you want to do addition of two numbers, then you need two variables to store. Suppose if I want to do addition of three numbers, then I will mention three variables because I want three data elements to be acted upon, and then I will print xyz, which is the function's action that it needs to add three variables, right? So that's the work of the function. So I will mention the work of the function inside this indentation. Now this is only the creation of the function, but not the working of the function. If at all I want to use the function, then I need to call it. Now if I call this function just like this without actually giving the data elements, do you think it will work? No, it will not, because my function which I have created expects three variables as input. Now I need to write whatever the three variables are there. I need to give out three data elements to the function. Suppose if I say 10 comma 20, do you think it will work? No, because there is one required positional argument z, because z is expecting some value but I have not given it. So I have to give some third value as well. So when I give out this 10, 20, 30, now the function works because the function expects three variables and I have given three data elements to it. So 10 gets stored in x, 20 gets stored in y, and 30 gets stored in z, and then it does its action. So I hope you got this, how a function is working. A function, we define it by using def keyword, and we use the function name here, and we write down all the expected values of the function in this parenthesis, like the expected data elements, and whatever the function has to do is written inside this indentation. Now whenever we call this function to invoke it, to execute it, we send all the required data elements to this function, and then the function gets executed perfectly. So I hope you got the basic structure of creating a function, how a function works, how a function takes input, how a function gives out output. So I hope everything is clear for now, and in the next video I'm going to explain about positional arguments, keyword arguments for more clear understanding. You have already seen positional arguments, but you don't know it clearly. When I explain it, you may think like I have already understood it. So that's all for today, and in the next video I'm going to clear out about everything about functions, and we are near to the end. Just 3 or 4 videos more to go to end this series, and after that you will be ready to learn pandas library, which is the next step in learning machine learning. So yeah, so that's all. Thanks for watching.